Hello my lovelies, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode of Point and Click Puzzle Games, whereby myself, Angela McCaw, is basically launched this channel to teach kids how to code. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about variables, okay, and what they are. Now, if you have looked at any of my other tutorials so far, and you've been coming on this journey with me, you will have noticed that in a couple of episodes ago, I did talk very quickly about a variable being like a cardboard box. We're going to go in and explore that metaphor a bit more today so that you understand what a variable is, how to use it, how to clear it away when you're not using it anymore, what kind of things you can store inside it, and all sorts of other bits and pieces that you can do inside the Lua programming language. So if you haven't been here before, this is 2D point and click puzzle games and adventures. Okay, cool stuff. So please do subscribe, stay notified to my channel, and then that way when I publish the next video, which is generally 3 times a week on this channel, you will get a little notification to say go and watch the latest video in this series on Lua programming. So what I'm going to do now, if everything works, is I'm going to dive on over to the left hand side of my left monitor screen, as it were, and I am just going to launch my simulator. Now, if you've got everything configured correctly and you've done the same thing as me, when you launch your simulator, it will also launch other bits and pieces of programming code and things that you want as well. And even if it doesn't, you'll be able to go and open up your Visual Studio and other bits and pieces as well. So we are going to click on new project, and I'm just going to call this my variables project so that we know what we're talking about, and then that way later on I can delete it when I'm done. And I'm just going to accept all the defaults. I'm not fiddling around with any of this stuff just yet. Okay, so what's going on here on screen, I'm just going to make sure that, there we go, everything's starting to open up now. So we have our code editor. That might be a little bit large actually. Let's just put it back so you can see it. And then down here we have my Windows folder hierarchy, as it were, where it's just the project I have just created is showing there. And then by default, by creating a project, Lua and the Solo 2D game engine gives me all the other files, assets and things that I need to make this particular mini program today work. Now, I like to start with a clean slate, so I'm going to delete all of that stuff. And as you can see up here, this little black dot has now appeared to say that I need to save this file. So before we do anything, I'm going to write the word local, and I'm going to call this my var, as in variable. Okay, now in fact let's call it a box. Okay, now I'm just going to save this and nothing at all is going to happen. Okay, but let me just explain what is essentially happening inside the memory of our game app at the moment. So our game has now created a little bit of storage in memory called my box. Think of it as like an address to where that memory is stored, and we can basically put things inside that box. Now, like I've said to you at the beginning of this video, a variable is a container of information. It could be an image, it could be a piece of text, it could be another variable, it could be a number, it could store all sorts of manner of different things, and we are going to look at those in today's lesson, as it were. But what we essentially are doing is now reserving a little place in memory to always have an item to be stored, as it were. Okay, so the reason I've used the word local is without it, the entire app, and as you can see down here in the bottom left hand corner, there are lots of files and folders, but we could essentially use this variable to pass information from one file to another. Now, at the end of this tutorial, I will show you my app behind the scenes, as it were, and all the files. I'm up to something like 80 gameplay files, and that's without all the admin files and navigation and menus and settings to do for the app that I'm building. So if you can imagine, let's say 100 files, and you're sharing information in these variables, then you know things can get really crazy. So what is a good programming practice to do is every time you want to create a variable, you start it with the word local. This tells the app and the entire game engine that basically everything that we're going to do is going to live inside of just this one file, and when we close and get rid of this file, our little game engine will automatically go through and then basically delete all those boxes from memory, all those variables from memory, so that that memory becomes free again to use. Now, if you can imagine mobile apps, iPads, tablets, things like that. They're only, you know, they're small devices. There's only so much room and space they have, and obviously the more apps you download, the more photos you take. All these things are resources that are using memory on your phones and your tablets. So if we can help our app as we design it tidy up as we go along, then this is a really good programming practice to get into. So every time we need to create a little place to store some information, we are going to create a variable, and we're always going to call that variable, or start it off by calling it local. Now, if I was to print this variable, as you can see, I've started to type the word print, and it's opened and closed brackets already for me. Oh, I've just over typed my little variable. There we go. If we come here and now type the word myvar, the Visual Studio is guessing that this is the variable name that we want to type, so I've just accepted that because it stops me making a human error and spelling mistake. And I'm going to hit save, which gets rid of that little dot, and if you looked carefully over on the left hand side over here, this little word nil now is telling us basically what's going on inside this box. So this variable, my var, is existing, but it's got no information at all. It's nil, it's empty. Okay, so what we could do is move down here and now give my var some information. Let's give it my name, for example. We're going to save Angela, and now because this information has been assigned using the assignment operator, which is the equal sign, when we print out my var, it now knows that this box contains the word Angela, which is pretty cool. Okay, and we can do other things. We can put in here, we could put a number. So for example, we could put the number 55. Okay, now what I want you to do is look carefully at what's going on in the code. I'm going to save this first of all, and then this is going to print. And as you can see down here now, this now shows number 55. Now I'm sorry I can't get the text on this console to show any bigger. I'll try and throw this up on screen when I can. But essentially we're now showing the number 55. So where has Angela gone? Okay, the word Angela. Well, basically what's happened is, at the moment, the way that we've created this variable can only at the moment contain one bit of information at a time. So first of all, we give it Angela. We assign, using this little equal sign there, we assign the word as a string, which is the technical term for text, into this box called my var, and then we're basically saying disregard that, delete it, and replace it with 55. Now that is why when we then follow that command, the next thing we do is print my var. At the moment, the only thing it contains is the number 55. And what it's actually done is it's taken that number and it's turned it into a string so it can put it on the screen over here. So what we could do is we could come here and put my var, and we could get really clever now, and we could say assign to it, okay, my var plus the number 5. Okay, so what's going to happen here is we are now going to be doing a little bit of code to do a calculation. Okay, so what we've got is the print of the variable before. Then we're going to take the number 55, we're going to add 5 to it, turning this now, and we're going to store it back in this, and we're going to replace the text inside, and this will now print out 60. So we're going to see 2 numbers printed out now. Okay, I'm going to hit save. And now what we've got over here is we've got the number 55, because this is what it's containing at this point in time when we've told it to print. And then we've taken that number 55, and we've added 5, which makes it 60, and then we've stored it or assigned it using the equal sign back into the variable. So we've replaced what it originally had, and then we've printed it again on screen. So what have we got going on here? Well, we've already then discovered that we've got 3 different types of information being stored in this variable. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to just slide on down. Let me just bring my cursor back over, and we're going to come back, move this down. We'll get to that in a minute, and I'm just going to block code this out. I'll explain that in another episode if you haven't already. So I'm just going to get rid of my code so it still exists, but it's not going to be part of this program. I'm going to save, and at the moment we haven't told it to print anything because I've just hidden that text from the, so we know it exists, but we have commented it out. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to print, open up the bracket, and then I'm going to use another command, which is the word type. Okay, And all I'm going to do now inside there is I've got to tell it what type are we testing. Well, we're testing this, my var. So I am now going to put this on screen and we'll show you what happens. So what we've got going on here now is we've asked the console to print out the type of data that we have stored in the variable myvar. Okay, so it's looked at the word Angela, it's seen that it's in double quotes, so it's gone, this is a piece of text, this is a string. Okay, and then we have told it to print whatever the type is, and it's told me it's a string. Now let's copy that. In fact, let's cut it out of there. So let's comment out this bit still. So now what we have is my var. Then we've got my var being allocated 55, which is a number. And now we're going to ask it what type of variable data is being stored. So I'm going to hit save. And what we've got being told now is that it's storing a number. So this is again a different type of data, a different bit of information. So we've now learned that we are basically storing strings and numbers. Let's just say you're running a piece of code and you want to know what the weather is doing. Oh, weather. Okay, and equals. Let's call the weather rain. Okay, so is it raining? Question mark is essentially what we could be asking. And we could literally write the word true. So you look out the window, and as a human being, you look out the window, you see it's raining, and then you could say, right, it's true. So if we was to type now print and what is the content of weather, rain, it will tell us on the screen that it's true, which is good. But we could also ask it what type of data is being stored in there. Okay, so we are going to put the print statement again, and this time I'm typing the word type, and I am going to put the variable name, and I'm going to hit save. And now it's telling us it's a boolean. So there are 8 actual types of bits of data that can be stored in a variable. Okay, and we as learning to program and things like that will only really be looking at about 6 different types of that for the moment at these sort of more earlier on stages in our programming career, shall we say. So we've already covered nil, which was basically when we've launched let me just delete that, and we print out what the variable contains when it's only just been declared but it's not been given any data. So we have a nil, we've had text, we've had strings, we've had other variables, we've had booleans, we've had tables, and the only thing that we haven't covered today is a function, and that is basically again another name that we can put in here, but we're going to cover functions in a different lesson. So that gives you just a real quick idea. Now the other 2 bits of data that you can store inside a variable is called user data and thread, but they are quite advanced programming contexts or complicated sort of programming structures and things that at this early stage you're not going to need to touch and deal with. So at the moment I'm going to tell you not to worry about those at the moment, but essentially that is what our little variable is about. Okay guys, so real quickly, just to finish and wrap up this tutorial today, I said to you at the beginning of the video that I would kind of explain to you why you want to work with local variables and not global variables. So what I've done is I've navigated real quickly to kind of my folder that stores all the files for this little game that I'm currently working on and building right now. So first of all, you can see that there are a hell of a lot of folders going on. So we've got folders that look after my fonts, my images, my icons, my map, my gameplay files, things that are testing, my user interface, all sorts of different things, including test scenes, cameras, backgrounds, all sorts. Okay, and I'm going to teach you all about folders and storing and managing your files long down the line as you start to build up the content of your app. But I just wanted to show you down here as well. I mean, I personally have this kind of little coding convention on how I manage my files. So I've got GP, which is gameplay, so it's a gameplay file, and I've literally numbered them and then given them a name because there are so many files involved in this game so far. And if you had something that was a global variable and essentially every single file here could access it, so you think how easy it could be to overwrite something you've done on, I don't know, the screen number 12, as it were, and you're on like number 45, and then you've completely forgotten. I mean, that was like 2 months ago you coded that screen, and you know, you can easily overwrite information and break your game. So we don't use global variables at all. We always use local variables. And if you want to pass information, which we have to do, but if you want to pass information from one file to another, etc., then we have different programming ways to do that, which are far safer, much more structured. You can test and tweak what's going on. The other reason why we do not touch globals is because Lua is, even though Lua is a very kind of simple programming language compared to lots of others, it can only really cope with about 200 local variables before it starts having a bit of a memory breakdown, shall we say, whereby when we declare a variable local, it knows it exists. When it's global, it kind of just sitting out there in the cosmos of the memory of the game and on, you know, the storage of the device, and there's no real way to maintain it. And you know, each variable that we create that's a global variable just adds to this memory resource, and it drains the energy of the app, and it makes it really slow and makes it really sluggish. And we've got no way of kind of, unless we go back and look through our code, we've got no way of really kind of tidying that up if we've forgotten all about it existing. Whereby if it's a local variable, even if we've forgotten about it existing, something within Lua has a thing called a garbage collection process. And if that variable is no longer being used, or it's been set specifically to nil to say it's not being used, then our garbage collection comes along and basically deletes it from memory, and that memory becomes available to be used by the app and our devices a bit more, and it stops things becoming slow and sluggish. So there's lots and lots of reasons why we do not touch global variables. We always work with local variables, and if we need to move information between one file and another scene as it were, then that's what we do. Okay, so that kind of brings us to a little bit of a closure today. Now, we haven't put any of this particular stuff on the app yet because we are still just kind of learning the concept of variables, but if that hopefully will kind of summarize a little bit more about what's been going on. And if you haven't had a chance yet, I will put the other links. I think Brian Burton does a really nice variable tutorial on YouTube as well, that kind of goes at sort of like a techie level of what all the different types of data that can be stored into a variable are, and he explains things a bit more. But hopefully that makes it a bit more child friendly for you guys, so that you can actually see something being used as opposed to why all the technical terms about it, as it were. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed that video. So I hope you've liked my video today. Please do subscribe, and as I said to you a minute ago, I will be putting all of the links to everything that I've covered today in the description below, and some other tutorials online that might be able to help you understand what a variable is a bit more as well. So that's it from me, and I'll see you on another episode real soon.